As the dust settles on the election, the Northern Land Council's Kim Hill has called on the Territory's federal Labor representatives to step down to make room for fresh blood. And former director of the Central Land Council, Tracker Tilmouth, has now bought into that debate. The long-time Labor Party member says there's a need for more Aboriginal leaders in the federal parliament, and the Northern Territory should be leading that charge. I spoke to Tracker Tilmouth earlier today. Tracker Tilmouth, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Now, traditionally, Indigenous people have voted Labor. In the election just gone, we've seen a huge swing away from Labor in the bush, particularly in Lingiari. Why is that?
Well, the policies of Jenny Macklin are to blame. The suspension of the Racial Discrimination Act, the way that the regional councils have been put together, the way the housing program has been working, all these policies to a certain extent have struggled. Now, the Aboriginal people aren't silly. Aboriginal people can see who and when is looking after them and how will they react in relation to the election. If we take both candidates, Warren Snowden and Trish Crossan from the Labor Party, Warren Snowden, to his credit, and on certain times had stood up for the Aboriginal people behind the scenes in Canberra. Unfortunately, Senator Crossan has been missing in action. So to a certain extent I agree with Kim Hill's assessment the other day. There is a time to move on. Unfortunately, people have overstayed their welcome and Aboriginal people have moved away from them electorally.
When it comes to issues like the intervention, though, that's something that both the CLP and the ALP are in favour of. Is there something there in misinformation then?
Well, the intervention promised a lot and delivered little. Now, we spent a lot of money on Aboriginal services rather than Aboriginal people. There are no jobs, there's no economic development, and what we ended up with is a huge bureaucracy ran on the misinformation and misfortune of Aboriginal people. We had the basic card, which is an absolute nightmare. You have to watch the programs on the grog problem in Alice Springs. So we've got misinformation, we've got policies that don't work, we've got absolutely genocidal policies in relation to the suspension of the Racial Discrimination Act, and you can put all this down to Jenny Macklin. Jenny Macklin should be removed immediately. There is no way in the world that any Aboriginal people in the Northern Territory and to an extent Australia would support Jenny Macklin's reappointment.
In this situation, you're calling for Indigenous leaders. You're Indigenous, you're a leader. Why don't you throw your hat in the ring?
Well, unfortunately, as you can tell by the grey hair and that, I'm a bit past it. Plus, my health is a absolute paramount at this time. But look, there are Aboriginal people out there who are capable of representing us in Parliament. There are Aboriginal people who are well qualified in this area. Unfortunately, due to the way the gerrymander and the branch stacking within the Labor Party, that these people don't get a look in. And that's the problem. We have a clique in Darwin of well-intentioned non-Indigenous people, call them the entrenched ideologues, who then decide who will be nominated for pre-selection for the Labor Party. Unfortunately, Aboriginal people don't get a look in.
Do we need to then revisit the idea of having an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander party in order to push some of these issues, especially given that Indigenous issues weren't on the platform for either parties in the election that's just passed?
I think that's a good idea to a certain extent, but I think Aboriginal independents are going to be the flavour of the month, especially in the next state election. I don't think that any Aboriginal person who currently enjoys support in their electorate, any Aboriginal member of Parliament, of State Parliament, can feel comfortable, because Aboriginal people have decided and are totally united against the intervention, are totally united against the Labor Party policies. And I don't think anyone can be comfortable that they're going to be re-elected, because I think that Aboriginal people will be considering either independence or a move to place themselves into a quasi-Aboriginal alliance or coalition and go to the electorate in that manner.
Who do you think needs to put that party together? Will you be part of that?
No, I'm a rusted-on Labor bloke. Unfortunately, I'm a union person. I'm also a Labor member. Now, I don't, to a certain extent, disagree with the intent. I certainly don't disagree with the dissatisfaction and distrust of the Aboriginal people against the policies of the current Labor Party. But I do know that something has to be done, and something has to be done very quickly.
It does sound like you're moving away from Labor, though.
I'm Aboriginal as well. So I'm torn between two things. My loyalty to the Labor Party, my loyalty as an Aboriginal person. I'm an Aboriginal person first. And if there's issues that aren't being addressed by the Labor Party, then I'll certainly speak up. If there's issues that are not being dealt with and requires other representation, I'll certainly speak up on that as well.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.